Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to hear from the man of the moment in some ways, I suppose. I'm speaking this afternoon with Peter Sherrington, who is the Chief Financial Officer for Arafura Rare Earths, and Mark Kristoff, Chief Executive of Traxys. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, gentlemen. I guess to start with, the news of the day, the long-awaited meeting between Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and US President Donald Trump, and it did pay dividends for Arafura, with that Nolans project receiving that extra $100 million. Can you just talk us through, perhaps, Peter, what exactly this could mean going forward for this project, this NdPr project?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously benefits for Arafura and the Nolans project, but I think it's probably much broader than that. It's sector benefits as well. So I think the interest from the US government and obviously EFA around equity opportunities there is demonstrating how serious the West is taking the issue of rare earth supply and building out those value chains, which we're going to talk about today, and having resilient value chains is critical to underwriting industry and manufacturing. So I think that's great. It's put a spotlight on it, which is good for us. It's good for our industry counterparts who are also in the space. I think the big thing it does is it de-risks raising money for what are really quite challenging projects from an equity perspective. They're very capital intensive. So I think they're probably the key benefits that I see coming from that particular announcement.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Mark, I guess turning to you as a trader, can you just explain a bit about the current market conditions for these rare earths? Just exactly how have things progressed over the years that you've been in the industry, and where you see things going forward?
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit of deja vu all over again. When the Japanese and Chinese had a dispute in 2010, there was restriction on rare earth availability, and it caused a skyrocketing in pricing. And I think what we've witnessed over the last 18 to 24 months with the increasing trade friction and tensions, primarily between the US and China, the rare earth market has gone into quite a shortage and tightness and scarcity of availability due to export restrictions. And that's translated into very nervous behavior by our customers, who are increasingly concerned about surety of supply and really having the product to keep their plants operating.
So look, I guess what does a resilient supply chain look like from Traxys' point of view with regard to the future demands of these critical minerals and where their demand is going to come from in the future?
Now, I think it starts with finding the right mines that have rare earths in a concentration that can be extracted, so that they can maintain a reasonable place on the cost curve. You then need the beneficiary of those rare earths, the separation, which is not necessarily an easy undertaking. Then you need the midstream industrial investment and development to take those rare earth oxides and turn them into the metals or other compositions, which ultimately lead to manufacturing the magnets, which are one of the primary applications of rare earths. But rare earths are used in quite a variety of different applications across the supply chain, which impact our lives every day.
I was struck by your comments in this morning's session regarding the 15-20 year jump in many ways that China has on the US and the West more generally. This morning's news, is this confirmation that everyone's woken up in your mind?
Yeah, as I said this morning, I think the awareness, every problem solving exercise has to begin with an awareness of the problem. So I think there's finally a global recognition that there are issues with supply chain sustainability, the manufacturing capability, the mining operational capabilities, and we're seeing notifications like happened today, a real representation of execution on that awareness. Now we have to deliver. So it's really incumbent upon us as an industry to be able to execute and deliver on executing that alternative supply chain availability. And that's why we look to partner with strong management teams and new deposits that are in search of capital surety and the ability to raise capital in a relatively speedy fashion.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, describing, I guess, the Nolans project, it's been a long-running project to begin to mine and refine those particular minerals. Talk us through exactly how important offtake agreements are to reaching financial close, which obviously Arafura is aiming for shortly.
Yeah, so obviously it depends on the commodity as to how important offtake is. So, you know, NdPr, it's a non-traded commodity. There's no exchange. The pricing that's there is opaque. And, you know, so in that instance, offtake is really critical. And I suppose you can take a view on how important it is to you, but you need to have a way to market these things. You know, you can't eat it. It's got to go to an end user who knows how to use it. So those offtakes are critical, particularly where you've got a project funding or project financing solution where your lenders want to see how you're going to monetize what you're producing. And so those off-takers in terms of either an end user who's mapped their supply chains, understands what they need, or a trader who works in that space and has the ability to work with a specialty mineral, and the off-taker being bankable is also important. Yeah.
Talk us through the off-take agreements so far, including, of course, most importantly with Traxys.
Yeah, so we've initially, when we engaged with the market, we talked with all the groups along the value chain, so magnet makers, tier ones who make components for the original equipment manufacturers, and then we've talked with OEMs. So we've been fortunate enough that we have targeted in the first instance the OEMs because we felt that they were the natural owner of the product. So we have an off-take agreement with Hyundai Motor Company and Kia for their EV business. Hyundai also has a robotics business, and it also wants to be in the drone space as well. So it's a good fit with their business where they have a significant magnet demand. We have a off-take agreement with Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy, so for their wind turbine business, their offshore wind turbine business. So those groups, you know, we have some exposure to EVs, some exposure to wind turbine business, but the Traxys agreement, you know, not all of the customers are big enough to take an off-take agreement or understand exactly what their demand will be. So Traxys is a good fit. It's a specialty metals trader, deals in lots of quite unique products that you have to have a high technical understanding of to understand what that product should be and where it feeds into a value chain and where it can come out. And so that type of offtake is good at aggregating up those users who might have niche requirements, really different specs, and, you know, or groups that don't quite yet understand what their requirements are. Traxys understanding that there will be a requirement there and willing to sort of sit in the breach between us and those particular customers.
Mm. Well, Mark, I guess as someone who deals with so many of these prospective projects and has an deep understanding of all levels of this supply chain, what would be your advice, I suppose, to many of these project developers looking to firm these off-take agreements to get their projects up?
Yeah, I think the way Arafura addressed it with a multi-pronged approach to different stakeholders, diversifying their sales outlets, and then coming to the realization that a company like Traxys can provide a catch-all and expose them to another 25 different customers that they could not necessarily face on their own. We also have the ability to partner and try to maximize netback return to the asset. So I think other companies that are thinking about this should think about it in the context of developing partnerships that further protect the capital at risk that's invested in their assets. You know, Traxys is a bankable off-taker, so the banks that are likely to provide project finance are going to be very happy to see us at the end of the cash recovery period and really collecting the receivables and marketing the product in a thoughtful way. So it's about the partnerships and finding the right partners that are bankable counterparties.
And how do you both see this relationship developing over time? I guess I might start with you, Mark. You know, you're someone who's obviously keen for this off-take agreement to be finalised and progress.
Now, listen, we've been in the rare earth business for 30 years, so long before many people knew what a rare earth was. And we've been committed to the space. We understand the really irreplaceable application of many rare earths in our everyday lives. So it's a market we focused on, have been involved in. We have technical salespeople that understand what the end users are looking for. We can help them optimize their blend of raw material going into their production. And we're really excited. We'd like a larger offtake from our partners, and by delivering the results that I know we can deliver, typically that's what happens. And shorter term agreements become lifetime agreements if you do the job properly.
Any bit of a nudge there, Peter? Look, I think from our point of view, all those things are correct, and I think the Traxys arrangement is probably fitting into what we require at the moment, but I believe it will expand. The other thing, though, is we can't be everything to everybody within the rare earths market. There is lots of rare earth products that we don't have enough volume to market ourselves, or we don't recover. We can already have instances where we're engaged with a customer and there is a product that they want at the moment that they have trouble getting in the market, and we can provide them with an introduction to Traxys. There is already some opportunities being realised there. I think when we're operating and when we get to a point where this demand-supply crunch comes, there's probably some good opportunities to feed off each other and create value for customers as well. It's in some ways we're trying to build a value chain. We've got to be collaborative to a degree. Everyone needs to make money, but there is a need to be seeing this as a partnership in some ways.
We've discussed multiple times before, I think, Mark, the critical mineral stockpiling that has been going on for as long as critical minerals have been such a key input into our modern technology and our modern systems. Where do you see the current movements of stockpiling going, and what will that mean for that international balance of trade?
Yeah, I think obviously we're seeing a heightened governmental focus on critical metals and the availability, and one of the answers is a stockpile. During the Cold War, the post-Cold War peace dividend was the disgorgement of the stockpile in the United States and Russia, many of the large European countries. So we had a period between 1993 and 2003 where there was a massive disgorgement of stockpile materials. It was so severe it even inhibited capital investment in metals and mining projects because it was available so cheaply in the marketplace. Because as government suppliers, it effectively had zero value. That helped create some of the shortages that we're seeing today. And I think, with the globalization trend being reversed, with the trade wars that are taking place, I think stockpiling again has a rational benefit to national security interests. And Traxys is engaging with governments across the West, not only the US government, but governments in the EU, in Asia, that are concerned about this issue. And we think there will be some movement and some credible efforts to build stockpiles that create a protective element for the respective local industrial concerns.
And that'll be across Western governments, you believe? It's something that's going to progress throughout the Western economies. I guess, Peter, your take on the stockpiling situation, the Australian government also, obviously, just before the last federal election, pledging to develop that critical mineral stockpile. What does that mean for an upstream producer and for your business in particular?
Yeah, so I think stockpiling is a critical part of the supply chain solution. I think the key thing, though, is that you want to be stockpiling when you have an end market use. So from my point of view, I think stockpiling makes sense where, Germany, US, Japan, Korea, and Japan and Korea already stockpile rare earths as well. So, and I think it's really important because they have critical manufacturing. You don't want that to be disrupted. In the event of a significant supply shock, it gives you the ability to counter that. So I think that's really critical. From an Australian perspective, I think the stockpile needs to be, connected with the right customers. We're not an end user of the product, so there is a need to have close connection with the actions of the Australian stockpile with customers in the US and the EU, Germany, and so on. So as you know, that there is an end use for that product, and I think that's really critical.
So as a market support in itself, not quite getting there in terms of the particular ambition there.
No, I think it's still relevant. I think stockpiling. So what I think will happen though, we will get these. We can see there's interconnectivity happening already. We saw it last night or yesterday between the US and Australia. I believe it's happening with other regions as well, fairly significantly, and I think it will be a network of solutions rather than just one location doing it by itself.
So you see it, I suppose, as working within that friend-shoring system that we've been hearing about this morning?
Yeah, I think that's probably the way I would see it working. That's where the material quantities need to sit. They need to be used in those markets, and the stockpile is, there's significant investment required initially to do that because those stockpiles have been depleted. I think probably what's more important is to use those connectivities through the stockpiling to also ensure that there is a relevant pricing mechanism emerge that operates on a demand-supply basis as well, which is sort of getting onto another topic, but it's slightly related.
Certainly of interest, and I'm sure that we might have time for that next year, but with a few minutes left, I guess looking forward in that crystal ball to IMARC 2026 potentially, where do you see this rapidly moving industry in 12 months' time? I might start with you, Peter.
I think the number of projects that are sitting in the phase ready for development is probably misunderstood. We will see some projects, it may look like they're being hand-picked, but they're the actual projects that are ready to construct. These are really challenging projects. I think what we will see is more of an understanding by customers, governments and producers around the challenges, and more collaborative approach to finding supply chain solutions, because I think it will become a critical thing that we all agree needs to be resolved, and that's happening now, but I think that's what I see as escalating over the next 12 months.
Wonderful. And Mark, your thoughts on the crystal ball?
Yeah, I think what we'll see is a collaboration between mining, producers. I think what we miss in this dialogue is the midstream processing capability, and I think you need to be able to process the separated rare earth oxide into the semi-finished product that goes to make the magnets, and we've got to develop that supply chain. I think you'll see governments liberalizing the ability of companies to work together, so the right projects will collaborate together and build, let's say, stable supply chain opportunities for the industrial consumers. So I think you'll see some M&A. Many of the projects that are announced today will not get done because they don't have the fundamental resource characteristics that justify the investment. So the right projects with the right resources, I think, have a great likelihood of continued support from the private sector and the public sector.
Yeah, it's certainly a fascinating place to be, and always great to interview two men like yourself on a day like today when this is front page news. Peter Sherrington, CFO of Arafura Rare Earths, and Mark Kristoff, Chief Executive of Traxys. Thank you so much for your time and your insights this afternoon.
Thanks, Tom.